Hey there guys, my name's Caleb. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a video talking about hats and what you need to consider when you go to buy your first hat. So the first thing you want to think about when it comes to buying a cowboy hat is what style you want. The main separation comes between a more city or a more country style, and when you think about a more country style, you can think about cowboy hats, heavier, bigger, wider brim hats with taller crowns. And then if you're thinking about a more city style hat, then you'd obviously want something in maybe a nicer, softer felt, and then you can do that in usually a lower crown with a smaller brim. Some important terminology is this would be the crown right here, which is the width that it goes up from your forehead, and then this obviously is the brim, and then on the inside you have a lining, and then you also have a sweatband. Sweatbands can be made out of leather, or if you're wearing a hat that you're planning on wearing in a lot of heat, you can often get these in different textiles, and then different companies will do different linings and different sweatbands according to however you like it, if you're going to get them custom, or they'll often come stock. One of the most important things that affects the quality of a hat, if not the most important thing, is what the hat is actually made out of. And so these come in three main options. So this would be wool, this would be a lower quality felt, something like rabbit, and then an extremely high quality felt, which would be something like 100% beaver. So I'm going to show you a few hats here to give you a few examples of the three different qualities. Here is what would be considered on the lower end, and this is a wool hat. You can see here, this is from the company Brixton. I borrowed this from somebody, and so you can see that it's made out of this wool, and it's kind of flexible. You can see here that it's stiff. It's in a more city Fedora style with a lower crown and this smaller brim. The main issue with wool hats that a lot of people deal with is that they don't regulate the temperature as well, and the biggest thing is that they're not as water resistant. So if you're actually planning on wearing your hat on a regular basis and you ever get caught out in the elements, a hat like this will get ruined when it gets wet and will completely lose its shape, versus something like a rabbit fur, but especially a beaver fur hat, which will be able to keep its shape. Next up would be something more like rabbit fur. This here specifically is in a dress weight, and so you can see it's a lot thinner and a lot more flexible. This is the Stetson Temple Fedora. I had it reflanged and reblocked, and so because of that, it looks a little bit different, a little bit looser and more casual. You can see here that a hat in this lighter style is very easy to reshape and to pinch and crush, which is something that made them very popular. So if you're buying in a rabbit felt like this, a lot of the times you will see rabbit felts on dress hats, but you will also see it on lower quality cowboy hats. And once you get into this range, you don't really have to worry about quality issues. From this price point, which is usually starting at the high $200 mark, you start to kind of see diminishing returns as you go on. And I would say past perhaps $500 or $600 is when you really see the diminishing returns as far as quality goes from a lot of brands. Finally is this hat, which is a custom hat I got done by Garahan Hat Maker in Orange, California. And this is made out of 100% beaver, and it's Western weight. So you can see it's stiff, and you can crush it, but it goes back to its style. It is not easily moldable into a permanent style, and it kind of stays where it is. So these are nice because these are great for work. They can take more of a beating than a softer city style or a thinner dress weight hat. So with hats, quality is not always indicated inside of the price point. So you want to make sure you know what you're looking for to make sure you're actually getting your money's worth. A lot of the times you'll see these designer hats or these fancy hats where they make them all dirty and they scratch them up and burn them and stuff like that. And those things like that, or these designs that they'll burn into them, often end up raising the price point of a hat significantly, even though comparatively to a higher quality, significantly higher quality hat, they might be the same price. So you want to make sure you know what you're looking for. One really important thing I haven't heard a lot of people mention, which I personally think is definitely worth considering, would be the sweatband. This sweatband is made out of a really nice soft leather, and this interior lining is very nice and soft as well. One thing you'll really miss out on these lower quality or cheaper hats where they have to cut corners One place they often do it is inside here in the sweatband, and so they'll often be made out of a thick and plasticky feeling leather, and so what this does is it causes you to sweat a lot more, and the sweat just sits in between your head and the sweatband and does not actually absorb into it. You can see there's almost some slight deformation here from where I've sweat, which is a good thing because it shows that it's actually working. If you live somewhere that is really, really hot, I would definitely consider getting a cotton or a textile sweatband to really let your head breathe. You may have to get it switched out more often, but it could really improve your quality of life depending on how high the temperatures are where you live. The next thing you'll want to think about, which I have already alluded to, is weight. And I've kind of talked about this in the quality. The weight of a hat determines, for the most part, I would say how it wears day to day and mostly the formality and the look you get. So with a really lightweight hat like this, where you can move it and change it, you're gonna get a really casual and easy wearing hat that is very comfortable, but it's also gonna have an overall dressier look if it's made out of high quality material. So it'll be better for someone who wants to wear suits or wears an overall more formal or old time look. And then here with a thicker, quote unquote, Western weight, which is usually heavier, you will see that, like I showed earlier, that the hat will be very stiff. And so this will lead to a better working hat when you're out and maybe you're going to encounter the elements, but it will lead to a hotter and a more stiff and perhaps uncomfortable hat. The next thing you'll want to consider with a hat is going to be specific styling points and color. So when it comes to color, this hat I have right here is in bone, and that other hat I had was in some type of brown. I don't remember what Stetson calls it. So this is not a silver belly. It is very similar, but this is more white. A silver belly usually has more of a yellow undertone to it. Silver belly is usually a substitute for white that most people get instead of on their hats, and I would say it's probably, along with black, the most popular hat color. And this is for a reason. It's because these two hat colors, if you have one of each, they really go with everything, especially the silver belly style. One big complaint I normally have with off-white colors is that they don't match very well with white, but the nice thing about a silver belly or even this bone color is that they're different enough, that they contrast enough, that I still think they look really good with something like this white t-shirt, especially in a silver belly hat where you get more yellow undertones and the distinction is much more clear. Another thing you're going to want to think about is going to be the hat ribbon size and the type of bow you're going to go for. So here, this is a relatively big hat ribbon for a Western hat. A lot of time Western hats have a smaller ribbon and they're tied with a daintier style bow that comes out further onto the hat. However, I kind of like the look of this neater, more formal looking bow, and with it being a little bit bigger. And so that's what I decided to opt with, which is a nice option to have when you do buy custom. Alternatively, on a lot of dressier hats, you'll see these bigger hat ribbons here, and they're often, so this is a very similar bow style to what I got on my Western hat, but this is more typical of these dressier hats here, and it is an overall bigger ribbon. And then finally, you'll see kind of these specialty or novelty bands like this braided leather, or a lot of the time you'll see really great like Native American beadwork on hat bands or very similar things. When it comes to a hat band, unless you already have a bunch of hats or you really know that you're going to enjoy a louder band, I would say in general, the best thing to do is to get the hat band that matches your hat as closely as possible. For most people, I would say you probably don't want any louder than maybe a slightly contrasting color. If you do want something louder, there's tons of great options you can get, especially when it comes to getting something custom made from like a leather artisan or someone who does beadwork. The next thing I want to talk about when it comes to hats is sizing. A lot of people have worn cowboy hats, but maybe they don't know exactly how they're going to size, and so when they're buying something that has such a high base price, they want to really make sure they get the sizing right. One of the easiest things you can do for this is to just go down to something like a local boot barn, which I know is close to a lot of people, and just ask to try on some hats. If you don't want to do that, then the best thing to do would be to try on a hat that already fits you, like a baseball cap, and then to search up a size conversion chart. So you could convert like the 7.5 to a 59 centimeter. Although a lot of felt hats do offer their sizes in more traditional sizing, like 7.5 or 7 5/8, or that we Americans are often more used to, but a lot of people also do it in specific centimeter sizes, which I personally enjoy because I find it to be a little bit more nuanced and more straightforward. So the final thing, and probably the most subjective thing for every type of hat, is going to be your crease and your styling. And this is something that can often take a lot of research. You'll want to look into exactly what you want, trying to figure it out. But a lot of times, until you get your hat in hand, you don't really know what you want. So when I got this hat, it actually had a much different crease and brim style. And I ended up taking an iron and reshaping it myself. I've also reshaped a hat for my fiance, and I've gone about and I reshaped the Stetson Fedora as well. It's a really easy thing. But if you are gonna get a custom hat done, that's one of the great things, is that you can get whatever shape you want. So something like this with these two big pinches in the front and this donkey kick in the back is not something you would be able to get from a stock hat ever. And so if you want something more unique, you're either going to have to bring it into a hat shop to get steamed, steam it yourself and redo it, or order a custom hat. If you do know what style you want, one thing you can do as well is if you order online, you can order open crown hats, and then when you get them shipped to you from a lot of hat stores, you can request them to already crease it for you. So they'll take the open crown, which is more when there's no creases in it, and then before they ship it to you, you can ask for a specific crease or a specific look, and then they can always add that in there for you. So you won't get a super specific pick over all of the details and to get exactly what you want, but it will give you more detail as far as if you want a crease that is not extremely popular, if you want something basically besides the Gus crease or the Cattleman crease, which is almost all you get from most major hat retailers. So the final thing I want to talk about is price. Price can be something that's a little sensitive, and that is also a very subjective thing as far as what people think is and is not worth paying money for. Across the board, I would say you do not want to buy a wool felt hat almost ever unless you know that you only want it for the looks and you do not care about the quality. But that's not really who my target audience is, so I would assume that you do care about the quality of your goods. And so I would say at the bare minimum, you would want to get a rabbit felt hat like this Stetson. You can also get rabbit fur in thicker Western weights as well. You can see that on a lot of the open roads that Stetson offers, as well as some of the cheaper cowboy hats they make as well. So when you're getting something in rabbit fur, the price point is often from maybe $200 to the high $300 range, depending on how big the hat is and how much felt it uses, as well as whether or not it's a dress weight or a Western weight, with Western weights usually costing more. From this point, you would move into a Western weight hat where higher quality blends like a rabbit and beaver blend will cost maybe more towards $500 or $600. But you can even get into pure beaver hats for below $600. This hat, which was custom made with 2 fittings, and I got to pick out all the details in 100% beaver, was $650. And so I would say that seems to be a pretty good industry average from what I've seen as far as how much custom hats cost. They occasionally cost a little bit more, they occasionally cost less. A lot of times if you do want something really, really special, like I know Kate Havstad from Havstad Hats, she does natural dyeing of her own felts, so she uses plants from her area, and those can cost up to $1,200. So if you really do want something particular or special, you will have to pay for it. But overall, I would say you should be able to get into a custom Western weight cowboy style hat for less than $700 in almost every instance. So I hope this brief overview gave you some information if you didn't have any, and I hope it's been useful. I'll see you guys in the next video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.